Hey guys, it's Chris from Highline Guitars, and you're watching another episode of From the Luthier's Workbench. In this episode, I am going to share with you my 5 favorite hand tools that I use when I make a guitar. These are tools that I constantly am reaching for and that I rely on extensively. And then in future episodes, I will share with you my 5 favorite power tools, and then my 5 favorite tools for doing fretwork. So let's get started. Number 5 on the list, a scraper. I love scrapers, and I typically will use scrapers for things such as when I glue a body blank together, the squeeze out that forms. I usually just let it dry, and then I'll take my scraper and I'll scrape it off. But I also use the scraper to put the final finish on figured wood, because nothing leaves a nicer finish than a scraper. Unlike sandpaper, there are no scratches, and you can really pop figure when you hit that surface with a scraper. And scrapers come in all different shapes and sizes and thicknesses. The one that I use is this Baco. This is the 474-150-080, and I think the 080 refers to the thickness of the steel. And I like this particular scraper. This is the one I reach for the most. These other ones that have these kind of interesting shapes, rarely use them. So I don't necessarily think you need to invest in these kind of shapes. You know, if you get it as a kit, that's fine, but I think you'll find that this is the one that you use the most. And then, of course, you'll also need a burnishing tool to keep it sharp, because as you're using the scraper, you can actually feel and see it getting dull. And so what I have to do is periodically stop to sharpen it. And this particular tool really works well for that. And I'm going to put links down in the description below to all the different tools that I'm going to be referring to. So if you want to check them out, click those links. Now, I also made a holder, and this is just something I fabricated myself: a couple of wood screws, some washers, a T-nut, and then a threaded knob. And the way this works is I can simply insert the scraper in like so, and then as I tighten this knob on the back, you can see how it bends the scraper, and that's necessary for the scraper to work properly. However, using just your thumbs to do it can lead to a lot of fatigue. Also, as you're using a scraper, it only takes minutes before it gets really hot. So this little handy holder makes it a lot easier to use. So that's number 5. Now, number 4 on the list, hand planes. Now, of course, hand planes can be used for all sorts of different tasks. You can use it to true up a gluing edge for a body blank or a scarf joint on a neck. You can also use it to take down high spots on the surface of a board. And the plane that I typically reach for the most is just the good old number 4 bench plane. And I've got a couple of those. There are other planes that you can consider purchasing, but really it's the number 4 is going to pretty much satisfy anything that you're going to need with regards to guitar building. But if money is no object and you want to get every plane that you could possibly want to use for guitar building, I would suggest not only getting the number 4, but you could also look at a number 5 or even a number 7 joiner plane. And those are really long, and they make quick work out of truing up your gluing edges for body blanks. So, but at number 4 is the hand plane. I've got, as you can see, a ton of files. But the 2 files that I reach for the most are going to be my Japanese Iwasaki Files, and I've got 2 of them. I've got an 8-inch half round and then an 8-inch flat. These are the medium cut version. You can get them in all different grades, I guess you would call it. I like the medium cut because with the medium cut, by varying pressure and the angle, you can vary how much wood you're removing with these kind of files. And they do a wonderful job of removing wood very quickly. And then once you have hogged out the wood with your files, you can just lighten the pressure and change the angle and get a reasonably smooth finish that's going to be easy to sand out later. And then, you know, I've got a handle with mine so I can attach the handle and file with it. It just makes it a little bit more efficient, easier to use. And then, of course, I've got a bunch of other files. I've got a diamond file here. I've got 3-corner files, various flat and half round metal files. And you know, you can buy those cheap and just have them on hand. You'll find yourself grabbing different files to accomplish different tasks. And I really like one of these little round fine files because I can even wrap sandpaper around this to get into some of the tighter areas. But my two favorite files, the ones that I reach for the most, are these two medium cut Japanese Iwasaki files. Now, number 2 on my list are sanding blocks, and I have a wide variety of different sanding blocks made out of different materials, and I keep them all handy in a toolbox so that I can rifle through it and find the right one for the right situation. But I use sanding blocks made out of pieces of wood. This one's MDF with sandpaper attached to both sides, and I have one of these sanding blocks, which is this is the classic, the number 436. It's been around for years, but you can wrap a quarter sheet of sandpaper around this, clamp it, and then sand with that. I also have sanding blocks made out of foam rubber, and you know, they're different consistencies of foam. I also have PVC pipe, and I attach some Velcro to this so that when I put sandpaper over it, it acts as a kind of a cushion so that it allows me to get the sandpaper into tighter areas and sand faster and more aggressively, or I can sand using just the hard surface. Piece of aluminum pipe, and one of my favorite sanding blocks are these erasers, just rubber erasers, and I picked these up at the dollar store. And the cool thing is at the dollar store where I shop, they have these giant, for big mistakes, rubber sanding blocks, and you can use them you know, in this size, or you can cut them in half and make smaller sanding blocks. But these have just the right amount of flexibility so that you can sand and your block will conform to, you know, a carved top shape, but it's not so soft that the sandpaper is going to conform to all the irregularities that you're trying to get rid of. That's one of the problems that can happen with the softer foam blocks, is that they tend to conform to surface irregularities and you can never actually get rid of them. They remain. But if you're trying to get rid of those prior to applying your finish, it's better to have either a wood block or a firmer rubber sanding block. And these things work great, and I use these extensively. In fact, I've got this wooden block here, which I cut to be the same shape as, or the same size as this eraser, and that way I can cut a bunch of pieces of sandpaper that will fit either this rubber sanding block or this wooden sanding block. So I've got all my bases covered with that respect. Now, my number 1 favorite tool, my chisels. And as you can see, I got a lot of them. And you know, it seems like when you do woodworking, anytime somebody in the family or a friend or, you know, somebody close who's a woodworker passes away, you get their tools. And that's a good thing. It keeps them in use. And I've collected a number of chisels. In fact, I have even more of them that I haven't brought out. But these were the ones that were right here in the shop, readily available. However, what you really need as far as chisels are concerned, and when I say that chisels are my favorite, even though I do use a CNC machine to do a lot of the cutting and carving, I still find myself grabbing chisels constantly just to do little touch-up work. And the most important chisel in my collection is an 1/8 inch wide chisel. I use this for so many different things, primarily for cleaning out the slots where I install the nuts on my fretboard. And this 1/8 inch one is just, I don't know what I would do without it. I cherish this tool. But if you're looking to get a set of chisels, what I would recommend is buying your chisels individually, because there's only 3 that you need. You need the 1/8 inch, you need a 3/8 inch, and then you need a 3/4 inch. And that's it. That's all you really need for doing the sort of work that we do with guitars. All these other chisels you really don't need. So if you buy a set, you're going to end up with a bunch of chisels you don't need, and it's going to cost you some money. But what you can do instead is invest in a higher quality chisel and just buy the 3 that you absolutely need. And start out with this 1/8 inch and then add to it, add the 3/8 inch and then the 3/4 inch, and you'll be good to go. And that's really all you're going to need. And of course, you're going to need a sharpening stone and a way to sharpen the chisels, because a sharp chisel is a guarantee of achieving success when using the chisels. If the chisels are dull, you're going to ruin the wood that you're trying to work with. So, maybe in a future video, I'll talk more about how I sharpen my chisels, because it's a fairly simple process. Okay, well, there you have it. That's a rundown of my 5 favorite hand tools that I use all the time for guitar building. And in a future episode, I'll talk about my 5 favorite power tools. And then eventually I will talk about my favorite tools for doing fretwork and final setup. So hope you have a great weekend and a great week ahead. Until the next episode, be sure to click that thumbs up button down there. And if you don't already subscribe, I encourage you to subscribe and then click that little bell notification. And that way you'll get notified every time I post a new video, which is roughly once a week. And until the next episode, take care and we'll see you soon.